we always consider it a privilege and a pleasure to spend some time with Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. He's on the line right now. Senator, good morning to you.
Morning, guys. How you doing?
We're doing really well. Hey, I got to ask you, with all of the stuff percolating in Washington, and I mean, there's some high-level stuff going on, I've got to ask about the June Dairy Month photo contest you're having.
Well, yeah, this is really in support of June Dairy Month here in Wisconsin, and we just opened up our Instagram website. It's at @SenRonJohnson, and just trying to ask for photos, hopefully of dairy farms, nice-looking cows, nice-looking Wisconsinites, and just gin up support for June Dairy Month.
So are you personally going to be judging the photos in this contest? That's what we got.
Will you be the guy saying, hey, that's a nice-looking cow?
I will certainly be part of it. I'm already looking at it. We've got a couple pretty nice-looking cows and some pretty nice-looking Wisconsinites already on the website. And we will definitely put those photos. We'll print those things out, and those will be displayed in our office and probably right on my desk.
Now, as Illinois residents, could we cross the border?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
I doubt your cows are as nice looking as ours.
Hey, don't start on our cows.
Give it a shot. I'll try not to discriminate.
Well, Senator, they're so thin from being overtaxed. It's hard to.
That's right. They're heading up to Wisconsin for employment anyway. We might as well get them into a photo contest if we possibly can.
Yeah, we'll be fair. I don't have discriminatory bone in my body, so bring them on.
Despite what Senator Rockefeller said?
That's right.
Okay. U.S. Senator Ron Johnson with us here. It's Riley Scot on WROK. Yes, turning a bit more serious. We have the chaos unfolding in Iraq. It seemingly gets worse each day. The president announcing some of a response yesterday. Will be embedding, 300 ex-Green Berets and others to assist. What do you make of the president's response to what's unfolding right now in Iraq?
Well, first of all, it is just such a tragedy. I mean, we had a historic opportunity. President Obama entered office, and Iraq was basically stable. His job was to maintain that stability and actually increase it. And the way, of course, you would have done that is you would have left behind a residual force to provide that stability, to put pressure on Maliki to have a true coalition government. So that historic opportunity that we could have used Iraq to show the rest of the Arab world and the world that Sunni, Shia, and Kurd could actually get along in a coalition government for shared prosperity. That has been blown. That has been squandered. And I particularly feel sorry for any American that sacrificed, for that opportunity. And at least in the past, they could look at the pictures of a young Iraqi woman with a purple finger. Mm-hmm. That was democracy we had provided for Iraqi, and now that has been squandered. So, the situation is as it is. We've broken Humpty Dumpty. Hopefully, we can put it back together again. I think we need to obviously be concerned about the thousands of U.S. personnel in Iraq. We need to do everything we can to stabilize the northern Kurdish region, the southern region of Iraq. We need to reach out to Sunni moderate leaders, Shia moderate leaders, see if we can't cobble together a coalition government. So I'm certainly want to do everything I can to help President Obama if he's actually willing to lead in this area. But they say the right things. We just haven't seen President Obama take the tough and resolute action that is required in these types of circumstances.
Senator, we talked with Congressman Adam Kinzinger earlier this week. He said this is a national security concern. We can't let Iraq devolve into a new Afghanistan where terrorists are free to do whatever they want and plan and plot against the U.S. Does what's happening and what might happen in Iraq rise to the level of national security concern for the U.S. to you?
Absolutely. I mean, take a look at when we didn't address when Al-Qaeda declared war on us, and we just turned a blind eye to that. We just put our head in the sand, and you had the Al-Qaeda camps in Afghanistan, and that's what resulted in 9/11. And now what's happened is Al-Qaeda has metastasized into Syria, spilling over the border into Iraq now. It's metastasized into northern Africa. So the threat from Al-Qaeda, if anything, has grown. It's more difficult to keep track of. And the last thing we want is, I think the Wall Street Journal termed this Al-Qaeda-stan. Basically an Al-Qaeda controlled area in Syria and Iraq. That absolutely poses a national security threat to America. These people hate us. They want to see Americans dead. They continue to plot against our homeland. And our only true defense on this thing is, our first line of defense is a robust intelligence gathering capability, but we also have to respond when these types of activities occur.
And, it appears the administration is going back to the tried and true playbook that they've gone with since election, which is to blame Bush for everything. And now the Iraq thing, let's blame Bush and blame Maliki while we're at it, too.
Well, Maliki's a bad guy. He had a historic opportunity as well. If he would have reached out to the Sunni as opposed to prosecuting him and firing him from key positions, if he would have led a true coalition government, this may also not have happened. But the fact of the matter is, the primary role to stabilize Iraq, I hate to say it, fell on America. And it wouldn't have taken that much. 15,000 troops, maybe 20,000 troops, to provide the stabilizing force like we did in Europe after World War II, like we did in Japan, like we did in South Korea. Look at how well those situations turned out. Now, I realize that costs America, but we are penny wise and pound foolish if we continue to bury our head in the sand and just deny the reality of the fact that there are bad people in this world, and they are coming after us, and we've got to be proactive in trying to disrupt their plans.
U.S. Senator Ron Johnson with us from Wisconsin. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. You were on earlier this week with Hugh Hewitt, who has his shows on the weekend here on the station. Talked a little about Hillary Clinton. You seem to be in the middle of Hillary Clinton stuff. She, of course, mentioned to you what difference at this point does it make. We're still looking for answers on Benghazi. She's been asked about it through the week on her book tour. She's seemingly muddying the waters more. She can't recall if she spoke to Secretary Panetta, doesn't know where the president was. Is this a deliberate muddying of the waters on her part as the investigation continues, and we still don't know what happened?
Absolutely. I mean, the whole reason she's doing this book tour is so that she can claim she's answered the questions, she's taken responsibility, and that's old news when these questions come up during the campaign. So this is absolutely a political effort on her part. But, she says she's claimed responsibility. For what? I mean, specifically, is she claiming responsibility for waiving security standards in Benghazi, for not only not responding to requests for increased security, but actually ramping down security? And by the way, that is what allowed the deaths of 4 Americans. Is that what she's taking responsibility for, her dereliction of duty? Or is she just kind of generally taking responsibility for whatever, which means she's taking responsibility for nothing?
And you make an excellent point, piggybacking on her, who's going to respond to that 2 a.m. call? Well, no one, apparently.
Well, the only thing we do know one of the things we know, don't know a whole lot about what she did or President Obama did on the night of the attack. But we do know they spoke around 10 o'clock in the evening, President Obama and Hillary Clinton. Then at 10:08, oddly enough, the State Department put on their website a press release that basically started blaming the inflammatory material on the Internet. In other words, the video. Mm-hmm. So the question in my mind, and of course they're not being transparent, they're not being truthful with the American public, were they talking about the cover-up, or were they actually concerned about what's happening in Benghazi? And another point I like to make is put yourself in the position of the Secretary of State when she's there greeting those bodies of those dead Americans, and her role is supposed to provide the condolences or convey the condolences, sincere condolences to the American public. But instead, our Secretary of State used that solemn moment to perpetuate and plant a cover-up when she talked to Tyrone Woods' father and say, we're going to get that video producer, we're going to arrest him. I mean, that was such a craven political act. I really want Americans to really think about what kind of person would do that, as opposed to just play the role and show true human compassion and just convey those sincere condolences.
U.S. Senator Ron Johnson with us from Wisconsin, Riley and Scott on WROK. Senator, we played back about a week or two ago. You're back and forth with a student who was testifying on a student loan bill, talking about student loan debt. I commend you for asking the questions you did. There's this discussion the president, Democrats want to make it about an interest rate, when it's really about the principle. We have students who apparently, in your back and forth, are not being told, are not being taught, are not being coached on what they might be able to afford to take on in debt. We shouldn't be as concerned about an interest rate as we are about the actual debt itself. Six-figure debt people can't pay back.
It is a tragedy. We have enticed our children to incur, in total, $1.2 trillion of student loan debt. On average, people graduating with a 4-year degree, somewhere between $25,000 and $25,000. That's how deep we've enticed our children to dig a hole as they start out their working career. And by the way, because we've done that, because basically the federal government, with all the good intentions to make college more accessible, we've thrown money at universities. So the cost of college and universities since the 60s has increased at 2.5 times the rate of inflation. Why? I mean, what is so different about what colleges and universities spend their money on that their costs would increase at 2.5 times the rate? Well, again, it was federal government involvement, best of intentions, but had the very negative unintended consequence of actually making college less accessible because we've made it so much more unaffordable. I mean, let's face it, the federal government isn't here to solve your problems. They create far more problems than Washington will ever solve.
Spending some time with U.S. Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. I know you're in the Senate, but we got to ask you about the changeover in leadership in the House. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I've got a pretty good relationship with both Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise. I think Kevin McCarthy's worked with me very closely on bicameral strategic planning processes. I think he's pretty dedicated to having an agenda that we can run on prior to this election to tell the American people what we're for. So, I personally like both men. I think they're patriots, and I look forward to working with them to actually show the American people if we get a majority in the Senate, if we maintain the majority in the House, this is what we will do to start solving these enormous challenges facing this nation.
Senator, you are in Washington in large part because of Obamacare, and your promise to fight it, your promise to reform, and perhaps replace at some point down the line. You've got a budget transparency bill on Obamacare, which is so important because I'm looking at these headlines. Obamacare subsidies on track to cost billions this year, LA Times. And then previous, from Roll Call, they say the Congressional Budget Office says it is no longer possible to assess the overall fiscal impact of the law. Even the experts have no idea how much this could cost us.
Hey, guys, by education, I'm an accountant, and I've been in business for 31 years. You need information. If you're going to manage any kind of process, you need information. You got to measure things. And that's the most frustrating thing, well, among many frustrating things about the federal government. You come in here, we don't measure, the intended consequences, much less consider or measure the unintended consequences of all these government programs. So, it always concerned me about Obamacare is this is just going to get wrapped right into this behemoth, this mammoth that is called the federal government. Nobody will be able to understand exactly how harmful it is, exactly what it costs. And so I'm just asking the CBO, I mean, you broke out all these costs, all these revenue streams when you gave us a score on what Obamacare would cost. And now all of a sudden, well, you can't break that out when we actually spend the money. I think that is absurd. And so my bill just would require the CBO to continue to track all the costs, all the revenues that they initially talked about when they scored this bill initially.
Speaking of absurdities, I got to get your take on what the media has been doing to the governor of your state, Scott Walker, in this document dump, this document unseal that really says a lot of nothing, but people are trying to make it say something else.
Yeah, the scandal is with the prosecutors. The scandal is with the news media. You've got two courts that have already ruled there's no criminal activity here. And, this latest dump, and of course this was ordered by the court, but the prosecutors are saying there's a criminal scheme. From my standpoint, I think this is an unconstitutional scheme on the part of the prosecutors. It's a political witch hunt, basically to deny individual Americans their right to free speech. That's what's really happening here, and Americans need to understand this. I think it's just scandalous the way the news media, the liberal news media, is treating this. There's no criminal activity here, and two courts have ruled that.
Right. And it's only coming to light because, people involved in the witch hunt are saying, hey, you guys are targeting us, and then so the information gets released and the headlines are prosecutors say Walker part of criminal conspiracy. That's been shot down multiple times.
Yeah, I think the people that are legally exposed are those prosecutors. So right now they're just trying to distract from their own legal liability in this case. I mean, what they've done is truly an abridgment of our free speech rights. The left is doing this across the board. That's what the whole IRS scandal is about: is to silence free speech, to silence the political opponents of President Obama and the left. And America needs to wake up to how dangerous this is in terms of the preservation of our freedoms.
U.S. Senator Ron Johnson with us. ronjohnson.senate.gov. Senator, I went to the website. I've pulled up the official rules for the June Dairy Month photo contest, and the only official rule here is it must be a picture of a Wisconsin dairy farm. So again,
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me take an executive order action right now, and I'll expand that. Anybody who's got a good-looking cow and a good-looking cow keeper, a good-looking dairy farmer, send it in here. California, Vermont, Illinois. we'll take all comers.
Well, we were just
and again, I will not discriminate.
We're right on the border, so we were just going to encourage people from, South Beloit, Rockton, Roscoe, just make that quick trip across the border.
Sure.
Head out to Janesville, Beloit, Monroe, get that picture of the Wisconsin dairy farm, send it in. We can get an Illinois winner for this contest. That's the plan.
You got to avoid the Wisconsin Border Patrol, though.
Avoid that by not speeding.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Senator Dudson, as always, we appreciate you taking time out of your day for us. Thanks a lot and have a great weekend.
Have a great day.
This is Riley and Scott Rewind. This is WROK.